Man, that Sky team is straight trash, homie. They are really bad.
It was supposed to be just another regular season matchup, but what unfolded left the WNBA scrambling to contain the buzz. Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull didn't just play well, they dismantled the Chicago Sky in front of fans who couldn't get enough of it. From long-range daggers to relentless hustle plays, the Fever's dynamic duo humiliated a Sky team already battling injuries and inconsistency.
The Chicago Sky they've got no horses in the race right now. Angel Reese is still out with a back injury. Nobody knows what's going on there exactly. They've got no offensive firepower at all. Cardoso got benched, I can't even tell you, maybe in the third quarter at some point. Ariel Atkins not even involved.
With Angel Reese's absence only magnifying the collapse. Every possession seemed to tilt further in Indiana's favor, and the reactions online were instant and brutal. Social media exploded with highlight clips, memes, and fans celebrating every shot that landed.
The rumors of Lexi Hull's demise greatly exaggerated. She showed up tonight, and she showed up big. 4 of 6 from three-point range. Basically ended the game with 1-2. 17 points, 3 steals, 3 assists, 3 rebounds.
For the Fever, it was more than a win, it was a statement. For the Sky, it was a public unraveling. And for the WNBA, it was a reminder that momentum can shift fast. And once the fans latch onto a story, there's no slowing it down.
It's been a blowout win. Caitlin Clark, everybody there, blowout win for the Fever. Caitlin Clark out, the Sky have their full team, blowout win for the Fever. Caitlin Clark out, the Fever the Sky have no Angel Reese and no Ariel Atkins, blowout win for the Fever.
From the opening tip, the Chicago Sky looked like a team missing both direction and confidence. Their offense was stagnant, their defense scattered, and their body language told the story before the scoreboard did.
For the Sky, I feel so bad for Hailey Van Lith. She absolutely just gets cooked every time.
Angel Reese's absence due to a lingering back issue left an undeniable hole in their rotation. But the problems ran deeper than one player. This wasn't about bad luck. It was about a roster that seemed out of sync and unprepared for the relentless energy the Indiana Fever brought. The Sky tried to keep the pace slow, hoping to drag the game into a grind where the Fever shooters might go cold. For a brief stretch, it worked. Early in the first quarter, Chicago managed to contest shots, force turnovers, and even hold a slim lead. But every possession felt like a battle just to get a decent look at the basket, without a reliable scoring option to take pressure off. The guards, their offensive sets quickly unraveled. Meanwhile, the Fever sensed blood in the water. Lexi Hull, who had been struggling with her shot earlier in the season, came out firing. Her confidence was visible from the moment she hit her first three-pointer, shoulders squared, quick release, and no hesitation. That shot seemed to ignite the entire team. Kelsey Mitchell pushed the pace, feeding Hull and Sophie Cunningham in transition, and suddenly the Fever were dictating every aspect of the game. The Sky's biggest weakness, their inability to respond to momentum swings, was on full display. When the Fever went on a scoring run late in the first quarter, Chicago couldn't stop the bleeding. Missed shots turned into long rebounds, which turned into fast break opportunities, and the Fever capitalized almost every time. Adding to Chicago's woes was their rotation instability. Players like Camila Cardoso were benched at critical moments, leaving fans scratching their heads. Ariel Atkins, expected to be a steady presence, was barely involved in the offense. It was as if the Sky didn't know who they could trust to step up, and that uncertainty created a visible hesitancy on the floor by the end of the first half. The Sky's early resistance had faded. The Fever weren't just beating them on skill, they were beating them on effort. Loose balls, second-chance rebounds, and smart passing sequences all went Indiana's way. The scoreboard didn't yet show a blowout, but anyone watching could feel it coming. For Chicago, this wasn't just another loss waiting to happen. It was a public reminder of where they stood in the league hierarchy. For Indiana, it was The perfect setup for their stars to take over and deliver the kind of performance fans would talk about long after the final buzzer. And as the second half approached, the Sky's lack of answers hinted that the worst was still to come. For weeks, Lexi Hull had been the quiet figure in the Fever's lineup, a player known for her hustle, her defensive grit, and her unshakable work ethic, but struggling to find her rhythm offensively. Critics were starting to question whether she could be a real threat beyond the arc. But on this night, all of that changed. From her very first made shot, you could see a different kind of energy in her eyes. She wasn't just playing to keep her spot in the rotation, she was playing to make a statement. Hull's breakthrough came midway through the first quarter. Kelsey Mitchell, reading the defense perfectly, swung the ball to her in the corner. Without hesitation, Hull rose up and drilled a three-pointer that barely touched the rim. The crowd erupted, and even her teammates seemed to feed off the sudden burst of momentum. That one shot was like flipping a switch. Hull's confidence went from tentative to unstoppable. Her shooting stroke was fluid, her spacing was impeccable, and she moved off the ball with purpose. On her next possession, she found herself open on the wing, caught the pass in stride, and buried another three. Chicago's defense, already scrambling to keep track of Cunningham and Mitchell, now had to account for a third shooter who was locked in and dangerous. It wasn't just the scoring, though. Hull's hustle plays were equally devastating to the Sky's morale. She chased down long rebounds, poked balls loose on defense, and fought through screens like every possession was the last. In one sequence, she tipped a pass at half-court, sprinted the length of the floor, and finished with a contested layup that had fever. Fans on their feet, what made her performance even more impactful was the timing. Every time Chicago looked like they might claw back into the game, Hull seemed to answer with a dagger. Early in the second quarter, the Sky cut the lead to 4. On the next possession, Hull curled off a screen, caught a quick pass from Boston, and drained a three right in front of the Sky bench. The body language from Chicago told the whole story. They knew they were in trouble by halftime. Hull had already posted double figures in scoring, along with a handful of rebounds and steals. The television broadcast couldn't stop replaying her highlights, and social media was buzzing with comments about her resurgence. For fans who had been rooting for her to break through, this game felt like vindication. Lexi Hull didn't just have a good night, she had the kind of performance that can redefine a player's role in the eyes of coaches, teammates, and opponents. And as the Fever headed into the second half, her hot shooting had opened the floor for everyone else, setting the stage for Sophie Cunningham to unleash her own brand of chaos. If Lexi Hull lit the spark, Sophie Cunningham poured gasoline on the fire. Known for her grit, swagger, and ability to thrive in high-energy moments, Sophie came into this matchup with the Chicago Sky ready to make her presence felt. And she didn't just contribute, she dominated. From her first possession to her last, she played like someone who refused to let the Fever waste an opportunity against a weakened opponent. Her impact was immediate. Early in the second quarter, with the Fever looking to build on their lead, Sophie positioned herself perfectly beyond the arc, caught a quick kick-out pass, and drilled a three-pointer without hesitation. The shot had barely left her hands before she was backpedaling with a smirk, feeding off the crowd's reaction. It wasn't arrogance, it was confidence, and it spread through her teammates like wildfire. But Sophie's value went beyond the scoreboard. She brought a physical edge that the Sky simply couldn't match. Every rebound became a battle she was determined to win, and she often did, even against taller opponents. One play in particular summed up her night. After a missed shot from the perimeter, Sophie fought through 2 Sky defenders to snatch the offensive rebound, pivoted, and put it back up for 2 points, drawing a foul in the process. The arena roared as she pumped her fist and headed to the line. Her hustle was infectious. On defense, she hounded ball handlers, cut off passing lanes, and wasn't afraid to take a bump to disrupt a drive. The Sky's perimeter players quickly learned that trying to get comfortable around Sophie was a losing battle. Even when she wasn't directly involved in a steal or block, her energy forced rushed shots and bad decisions. And then there were her timely threes. Much like Hull, Sophie seemed to have a knack for hitting shots right when the Sky were desperate for a momentum shift. Midway through the third quarter, Chicago had trimmed the Fever's lead to single digits. The crowd sensed a possible run brewing, but Sophie shut it down immediately. After setting a quick off-ball screen, she popped to the top of the key, caught a pass from Mitchell, and splashed another three-pointer that deflated the Sky's energy in seconds. What made her performance stand out was the way she balanced intensity with composure. She celebrated big plays, but she didn't lose focus. When the Fever needed someone to slow the tempo, Sophie handled the ball with patience, finding the open player and making the right pass. She wasn't just scoring, she was orchestrating. By the time the fourth quarter rolled around, the Sky's defenders were exhausted from trying to keep up with her movement and physicality. Sophie finished with an impressive stat line, but the numbers only told part of the story. She had imposed her will on the game, broken the Sky's spirit, and given the Fever an emotional anchor. And as the minutes ticked away, it was clear that the combination of Hull's shooting and Sophie's relentless play had turned what could have been a competitive game into a full-blown humiliation for Chicago. For the Chicago Sky, this game was a harsh reminder of how fragile their roster had become without Angel Reese. Her absence wasn't just about missing points or rebounds. It was about losing the team's emotional heartbeat. Her ability to rally teammates and her knack for controlling the paint were nowhere to be found. And without her, Chicago looked disjointed from the start. On paper, the Sky still had capable players, but in practice, their offensive identity seemed to vanish the moment they crossed half-court. Every possession looked forced, every shot felt contested, and every drive ended in either a turnover or a bailout pass. The chemistry that a winning team relies on simply wasn't there. Instead, there were long stretches where Chicago's guards dribbled aimlessly, waiting for an opening that never came. Camila Cardoso, one of the few interior presences who could have filled some of Reese's void, saw reduced minutes and was benched during critical stretches. That decision left many fans and commentators baffled. Ariel Atkins, usually a dependable two-way contributor, was practically invisible on offense, rarely touching the ball in scoring positions, without their stars commanding attention. Role players were left to take shots they weren't comfortable with, leading to ugly possessions and easy rebounds for Indiana. What made matters worse was how quickly the Sky unraveled after small setbacks. Early in the second half, Chicago managed to trim the lead to 7. The crowd tried to rally behind them, sensing a potential momentum swing. But just as quickly, the Fever answered with a series of baskets from Cunningham and Hull. The Sky's shoulders slumped. Their defensive rotation slowed, and their communication broke down entirely. Even on the rare occasions when Chicago forced a miss, they struggled to secure the rebound. Indiana's relentless effort on the boards, led by Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull, turned those missed opportunities into second-chance points. Each putback or hustle play felt like another punch to Chicago's confidence, and then there was the body language. Without Reese's fiery presence to keep spirits high, the Sky looked deflated. Players avoided eye contact after turnovers, and the bench was eerily quiet, even during timeouts. Coaches barked instructions, but there was little sign that adjustments were taking hold on the floor. Defensively, the Sky had no answer for Indiana's spacing. With Hull and Cunningham both shooting lights out, Chicago's defenders were forced to stay glued to the perimeter, which opened up driving lanes for Kelsey Mitchell and post touches for Aaliyah Boston. It was the kind of pick-your-poison scenario that left the Sky scrambling and ultimately collapsing under the pressure. By the fourth quarter, the Sky's fight was gone. The final minutes were less about trying to win and more about enduring the inevitable. Without Angel Reese, Chicago didn't just lose a game, they lost their edge, their cohesion, and the belief that they could hang with a locked-in Fever squad. And as the buzzer sounded, it was clear the damage went deeper than the scoreboard. Even as Sophie Cunningham and Lexi Hull were putting on a show, there was another storyline brewing that had Fever fans buzzing the possible return of Caitlin Clark. For weeks, whispers had been circulating about when the rookie phenom might rejoin the lineup, and this game poured fuel on the speculation. Reports hinted at August 12th as a potential return date, though nothing had been confirmed. Still, the chatter was impossible to ignore. Clark's absence had forced the Fever to adapt. Without her elite playmaking and scoring, they leaned more heavily on players like Kelsey Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, and on this night, Hull and Cunningham. While the team had found ways to win, there was an unspoken understanding among fans and players alike. The Fever's ceiling was far higher with Clark on the floor. During warm-ups, Several cameras caught glimpses of Clark on the sidelines, interacting with teammates and looking upbeat. That was all it took for speculation to spike online. Social media threads exploded with theories, from fans claiming they had inside info about her readiness to others analyzing her body language for signs that she was close to a comeback. The timing of her rumored return was significant. With roughly a month left in the regular season, the Fever were in the thick of the playoff race. Getting Clark back before the postseason would give her time to reacclimate, rebuild chemistry, and potentially push the team to another level. But there was also a risk rushing her back too soon could jeopardize both her health and the team's long-term plans. Even Fever head coach Stephanie White added intrigue with her measured comments. In recent interviews, she neither confirmed nor denied the August 12th date, saying only that Clark's recovery was on track and that the team would do what's best for her and the organization. Those carefully chosen words only deepened the mystery. For the Chicago Sky, the thought of Clark returning was hardly welcome news. This game had already showcased how dangerous Indiana could be without her. Add Clark's passing vision, deep shooting range, and ability to control tempo, and the Fever instantly become one of the most dangerous offenses in the league. The fans at Gainbridge Fieldhouse seemed to sense that possibility. Every mention of Clark's name during the broadcast drew loud cheers, and the arena energy reflected a fan base that believes the best is yet to come. The Fever's social media accounts played into it as well, posting highlight reels of Clark from earlier in the season without offering any new injury updates, a move that only kept the speculation alive whether or not August 12th proves to be her actual return date. One thing is certain, the Fever's opponents are watching closely. If Clark comes back healthy, the dynamic she brings alongside Hull, Cunningham, Boston, and Mitchell could transform Indiana from a solid playoff team into a legitimate contender. And if that happens, this win over Chicago may be remembered not just for the humiliation it handed the Sky, but as the night the Fever's true playoff push began. The win over Chicago was decisive, but it also reignited a bigger conversation around the Indiana Fever. Are they truly built to contend for a championship this season? Or are they still a year or two away from being a serious threat? On paper, this roster has the star power, shooting, and defensive grit to hang with the league's best. In practice, their season has been marked by stretches of brilliance, followed by frustrating lapses. A major strength lies in their versatility. With Aaliyah Boston anchoring the paint, Kelsey Mitchell running the perimeter offense, and role players like Lexi Hull and Sophie Cunningham stepping up in big moments, the Fever have multiple ways to attack. When Caitlin Clark returns, her playmaking will open up even more options, creating mismatches that could overwhelm less disciplined teams. The game against the Sky showed how dangerous this team can be when their shooters are locked in. Chicago's defense simply couldn't cover all the threats at once, but there are legitimate concerns. Depth remains an issue, especially with injuries sidelining key contributors for extended stretches. When the bench is forced into heavy minutes, the drop-off in production can be noticeable. Against elite playoff teams with deep rotations, that lack of consistent second-unit firepower could be costly. Then there's the question of consistency. The Fever have had games where they look unstoppable, only to follow them up with performances where turnovers, missed defensive assignments, and cold shooting doom them. Championship teams minimize those valleys and maintain a high baseline of performance, even on off nights. Right now, Indiana is still learning how to keep that focus over a long stretch. Coaching is another factor. Stephanie White has done a solid job managing the lineup through injuries and developing younger players. But playoff basketball demands adjustments on the fly. The Fever's ability to adapt mid-game, especially against experienced playoff opponents, will be a key test of White's tactical acumen. There's also the physical toll of the postseason to consider. Playoff basketball is more physical, more demanding, and less forgiving. The Fever will need to match that intensity night after night, and their young core will be tested in ways they haven't experienced yet. Veterans like Cunningham bring the toughness and experience to handle that, but the younger stars will need to prove they can rise to the occasion. Still, the win against Chicago hinted at what's possible. Even without Clark, the Fever played with cohesion, urgency, and the kind of swagger that can carry a team deep into the postseason. If they can stay healthy, get Clark integrated quickly and tighten up their bench contributions. The Fever could easily be more than just a playoff participant. Whether that translates into a championship run this year is another matter entirely. But one thing is clear. If Indiana catches fire at the right time, no one will want to see them in a playoff series. And for the rest of the league, that should be a very real concern. The Fever's performance against Chicago was impressive, but it also highlighted the razor-thin margin they're working with when it comes to depth. Injuries have forced them to lean heavily on a core group of players, and while those players have delivered, the grind of the season is unforgiving. That's why the mention of a possible hardship contract after the game immediately caught attention. In the WNBA, a hardship contract is a short-term roster addition allowed when a team has multiple players unavailable due to injury or other circumstances. For Indiana, this option could be critical in shoring up their backcourt, especially with 2 point guards sidelined. Without a true backup who can reliably handle the ball, the burden has fallen on Kelsey Mitchell and, at times, even off guards to initiate the offense. While they've managed, it's not sustainable in the long run, particularly if the Fever want to make a deep playoff push. The front office now faces a pivotal decision. Do they use this opening to bring in a seasoned veteran who can provide immediate stability, or do they take a chance on an unproven but high-upside player who could grow into a bigger role next season? A veteran could slot in seamlessly, offering ball security, late-game composure, and the ability to run the offense without disrupting the current chemistry. On the other hand, a young player could bring fresh energy and an unpredictable spark that might catch opponents off guard. The urgency isn't just about filling minutes, it's about protecting the team's rhythm. Right now, the Fever's offense flows best when Mitchell and Cunningham are free to focus on scoring rather than playmaking. Without a capable secondary ball handler, those two are forced to split their attention, which can dull their scoring impact over time. Fans, of course, are already throwing out names. Some are calling for a reunion with familiar faces who have previously worn the Fever jersey, while others want the front office to scour overseas leagues or training camp cuts for hidden gems. Social media threads are full of speculation, and every new rumor sends Fever fans into a frenzy of debate. There's also the reality that adding the right piece now could pay dividends beyond this season. Even a short-term contract can serve as an audition for a more permanent spot, giving the Fever a head start on next year's roster construction. And if the team finds someone who clicks immediately, it could be the difference between a exit and a legitimate run to the semifinals. The clock is ticking. With the postseason approaching fast, any new addition will need time to integrate into the system and develop on-court chemistry. That means decisions have to be made sooner rather than later. The Fever's next move could be the kind of subtle roster tweak that quietly changes the trajectory of their season, or it could be a missed opportunity they'll look back on with regret. In a year where momentum means everything, this is a choice they simply can't afford to get wrong. For the Chicago Sky, this loss wasn't just another mark in the standings, it was the kind of defeat that leaves lasting scars. The scoreboard told one story, but the body language, the on-court miscommunications, and the flat energy told a far more damning one. Chicago looked like a team searching for an identity, and the absence of Angel Reese has only made that search more desperate. Reese's injury, officially described as a back issue, has been shrouded in uncertainty. There have been no clear updates, no firm timelines, and no consistent information from the organization. That silence has fueled speculation among fans and analysts alike. Is her recovery taking longer than expected? Is the team being overly cautious? Or is there more going on behind the scenes than anyone is willing to say? Without her dominating presence in the paint and relentless motor on both ends, the Sky's already thin margin for error has vanished. Against Indiana, the void was glaring. The Sky struggled to control the boards, losing countless second chance opportunities to the hustle of Lexi Hull and Sophie Cunningham. Interior defense was a revolving door, with Aaliyah Boston feasting on post touches and the Fever's guards getting to the rim with little resistance. Normally, Reese's physicality and instinct for positioning would have disrupted those sequences. Instead, Chicago was left to watch as Indiana's lead steadily grew. But the problem runs deeper than missing one player. The Sky's offensive execution was stagnant from start to finish. Without Reese drawing double teams or providing an outlet, in the high post, Chicago's guards were forced into isolation plays that too often ended in contested mid-range jumpers. Ball movements slowed to a crawl, and possessions felt like they were being played on a shot clock, twice as fast as everyone. Elsa's morale appeared to crater as the game wore on. Missed shots turned into frustrated glances, defensive breakdowns, were met with silence instead of accountability, and the bench was subdued even during brief scoring runs. That lack of emotional lift is precisely what Reese has provided all season. Her energy has often been as valuable as her points and rebounds. Without her, the Sky looked flat and worse. Resigned, the contrast between the two teams was impossible. To ignore Indiana, even without Caitlin Clark, played with joy, purpose, and confidence. Chicago, missing their own young star, looked hesitant and disconnected. That disparity in mentality is as damaging as any talent gap. As the season winds down, the Sky face a sobering reality. Even if Reese returns, the damage done in her absence to both their playoff hopes and their team chemistry may be too great to repair. For now, the Angel Reese mystery remains unsolved, and until it's resolved, Chicago's ceiling will stay painfully low. The only question is whether this is just a temporary dip or the beginning of a longer rebuild. The Indiana Fever's dismantling of the Chicago Sky was more than a regular season victory. It was a showcase of depth, resilience, and the dangerous potential of a team hitting its stride. Sophie Cunningham's grit, Lexi Hull's redemption, and a collective defensive effort sent a clear message. Even without Caitlin Clark, the Fever can dominate when locked in. For Chicago, the night was a mirror reflecting their struggles: disjointed offense, lack of leadership, and the glaring absence of Angel Reese. But beneath the highlights and lowlights lies a bigger story. The Fever are building momentum at the perfect time, and with Clark's return looming, they could emerge as one of the league's most dangerous playoff threats. The Sky, meanwhile, must confront hard truths about their roster and identity. One team is surging forward with purpose. The other is stuck searching for answers and running out of time.